Hello everyone, it's Charging Badger. Now I went to MagicCon Amsterdam and it's been a bit slow in getting out, but here is my review of that event. So long story short, I was working on the Friday, couldn't go in the morning, and then got a message through saying my flight had been cancelled, so I had to make a mad dash to London, make a quick stop for supplies, and then eventually get a Eurostar through to Amsterdam. After arriving about 3 hours later than I had originally planned and missing out on the evening's festivities, I went and got coffee, got ready for the day, and made my way to the RAI Centre in Amsterdam. Myself and Lewis go and pick up various passes. Lewis had got his the day before, and we bump into Revelo and Amy from Wallroom EDH, and Tom, also known as Overfiend on the internet. So the creator area was a nice big open space where most people could just get around a table who were creating content. You could set up your equipment, you could record what you wanted, you could get other creators, and you could collaborate on things. Revelo and Amy did a great set where they went and found content creators and they got them to guess legendary creatures. They asked me, and I proved that once again my encyclopedic knowledge of Magic the Gathering sets is no longer as good as it used to be. So the content creator area was nice and big. There was areas for the specific meet and greets and the specific events, such as Adam the Gathering's token design competition, but there was space for people to grab each other and collaborate on some small projects. So we sat around the table, we played a game of Commander. Lots of other people were doing the same thing, setting up cameras where they could. Only one small gripe about the fact that priority was given to bigger content creators if space was at a premium, but these things happen. So my plan originally was to make as much content as I could on the Saturday. With me having a much shorter time at MagicCon because of work, and then even less time because of travel commitments, I knew that Saturday was going to have to be the day I made as much content as possible, and then I saved the Sunday for catching up with friends, getting a few other little bits done. I had signed up for the Loading Ready Run Chaos Draft, and I was planning on trying to meet up with Loading Ready Run again on the Sunday, but spoiler alert, that doesn't end up happening. A few of the other content creators I've spoken to had signed up for a few other events, including Gavin's mystery event, and really there was so many events to sign up to, it was really difficult for people to pick. There was a Commander and Cocktails. Unfortunately, that went across the whole weekend. I was really interested in doing that, but I didn't have this time to go across the 3 days, so I already knew that I couldn't sign up for that one, despite the fact I really wanted to. But it's definitely one I would look at for future events when possibly time allows. There was also plenty of free play area, there was lots of cosplay, there were panel shows going off, there was so much to do. There was no way that you were going to get to see absolutely everything unless you were there for the whole 3 days, and regardless of the format that you enjoy playing the most, there was something there for everybody, and it really was the best way of showcasing Magic the Gathering for new and existing players. So it's been a while since I've been to a large-scale Magic the Gathering event. Apart from the odd Command Fest, the last time I was at a big-scale Magic event will have been long before the pandemic at a GP in London. And before that, it was GPs. GPs were the main thing to go. That's showing my age. The RAI was a really good venue. The way they'd sectioned out the 3 areas so that you had the family area, the free play area, as soon as you walk in, and then to get to any of the ticketed events you had to walk through the area that had Commander players, the area that had the Pro Tour, the area that had all the stalls, the area that had the content creators, the area that had the artists. You walked through a showcase of Magic the Gathering in order to get to your ticketed event, but it also meant you knew where everything else was. So once you did your ticketed event, you'd be like, oh, I know where the Commander area is, I can go play Commander with my friends, or I can arrange to meet up. Or you can go and play free play that's not Commander at the free play areas, where you would be able to see the cosplay competition taking place, you'd be able to see people going to the panels, you'd even be able to very quickly go from the free play area to a panel if that's what you wanted to do. So what I used to call the bottom of the venue, we had the Commander area. There were plenty of people walking around with paddles saying looking for games, and as soon as they'd get a pod together they'd sit you around a table and help you get on. It was really great. You very rarely had to wait to find a game, and you often found as you were walking through you would bump into people that you knew, and if they were already in a game, you'd have a bit of a chat and maybe try and tag onto a game later on, or at least you knew where people were. Right at the very bottom you had the Pro Tour. There was an area for people playing in the Pro Tour, then you had the play area for the Pro Tour, and off in the distance you had the commentary area. So where I'm filming all of this from is the top 2 layers, which again were open play space, and a lot of people were using that to get a kind of quiet space away from all the hustle and bustle. And I really liked this. I liked the ability for there to be enough play space for people to comfortably sit around a table and not feel like they've been crammed into the space that they've been given to play in. And it was definitely a real positive for the RAI. There was lots of places to play Magic, there were lots of places to play Magic comfortably, and nobody, from what I could see in the free play spaces, was ever a premium for space. So next up was the Loading Ready Run draft. Now this took a bit of a weird format. So you got given 6 packs to begin with. Most of them were Modern Horizons 3 packs. Then you had a few others such as Crimson Vow, Theros, Innistrad, Khans of Tarkir. There was a really wide selection. You got 6 packs made up of 3 Modern Horizons 3 and 3 of any other. You picked 3 out of that 6 to keep for yourself to build up your pool with afterwards, and you drafted with the other 3. There was no wheeling of cards. You drafted down a really long table, and interspersed in that were members of Loading Ready Run. So as you were passing cards down, there was no point in it wheeling around. After you'd got that, you were then going to build with that pool of cards. After pack 1 had finished, they randomly gave everybody a collector booster for Modern Horizons 3 and added that to the pool as well. So there was very much if you got a really good bomb, you were probably going to do okay in this. And that's okay, it's part of chaos. Once you built your deck, you got 3 rounds, and the way they did it was they made the rounds really, really long, but they were also best of 1. The idea being that at the end of every round, people would get a chance to talk to members of Loading Ready Run, get stuff signed, chat about their decks with each other, and spend some time enjoying the game. So they were best of 1. They were relatively long rounds, but the idea being that you spent that time socialising, you spent that time interacting. So it was a long session. It took up a big chunk of time, but it was great because you could walk around the tables after, members of Loading Ready Run and finish their games. You could say, "Do you mind just signing my playmat?" You could do all of that. It was almost like having that meet and greet experience, but also getting to play a draft. Some people were really lucky and got the ability to play against members of Loading Ready Run. I was not. I got 3 games in, and those 3 games were all really, really fun. I built a Mardu deck. I got pretty lucky in that some of the fixing came out as I was playing. The Khans block did not have a fetch in it, but it did give me a Mardu banner, if I remember correctly. And so yeah, I built a deck that I thought was going to be pretty good in a limited setting. So whilst I got some pretty nice cards in the card pool, I was already pretty committed to building a Mardu aggro deck by the end of kind of pack 2. I kind of forced during pack 3 that Mardu deck, and it did pretty well. Every single game I played, it took my opponents to almost lethal. And then there was always something that changed the tide of the game, and it was almost always like a big bomb rare. And that's fine. I had no problem with that. I thoroughly enjoyed all 3 games. I went 0-3 Chaos Draft and enjoyed every single minute of it. The cards that were coming out, you had no idea what to expect. You couldn't plan for anything. You couldn't anticipate anything. And it was absolutely hilarious when certain cards were coming out to play. So then after the loading ready run draft, we decided to have a sit down. We were going to play some games of Commander, but whilst we were waiting for people to meet up with us, we decided to crack open some packs of Modern Horizons 3 collector boosters, because everything is content, and that was what we were there to do on the Saturday. So we opened up 2 packets of Modern Horizons 3 collector booster. My camera decided to not play ball in the first one, I think, and so the footage is a little bit shaky at times. Some of that, however, I think is from Lewis's excitement at the pulls that came out of those packs. Modern Horizons 3 had some nice cards and some nice reprints and some nice alternate arts, as you can see from, I think it was the first pack, where we got a really nice alternate or old style border Toxic Deluge, if I remember correctly. Next up, we went for a wander around the artist gallery. A lot of the artist tables were really already booked up, and so it was difficult to get some time with some of the bigger names. So for example, you didn't really have much chance to get your Jeweled Lotus signed. John Avon obviously was very busy a lot of the time, as he usually is, because he's very popular. So we potted around, we looked at some of the stuff, and we talked to some of the artists who were not busy at the time. And I went and got Lara Croft signed. We then went and got on with some shenanigans. We caught up with Max Makes Magic, who was cosplaying as Khan in the amateur competition. We went and looked at some of the professional cosplayers. We had a look at some of the things on offer for people who weren't necessarily playing Magic the Gathering, such as the Search for Fibbleflip, where there were a number of locations around the convention hall where you could get proof that you'd found an aspect of Fibbleflip signed on a piece of paper, and in return, once you'd collected them all, you'd get some postcards. So there was something for everybody, even stuff to keep the smaller planeswalkers entertained. Eventually, those thoughts turned to more than just Magic cards, and we needed to get some food. So we'd agreed as part of the UK content creators that we were going to get together and chat about how our experiences had been so far, who we'd seen, what we got up to, how our events had gone, if we'd won any games, if we'd had any big wins, if we'd had any amazing losses, all those sorts of things. It was such a great time to sit with other UK creators and just enjoy some time as a group. It doesn't happen very often. Even at big events, you think, oh, you see each other in the creator corners, you see each other in those spaces. You don't actually get a huge amount of time to just relax and chill out with other content creators, because you're always focusing on either your content or making a good job of someone else's content. So it was really nice to just sit and chat to each other, have a bit of a laugh and a joke, and enjoy each other's company. And the UK Magic content creators are some really great creators, and if you haven't caught up on some of their content, you absolutely should. Everybody at that table makes amazing content, and if there's a single one of them that you don't recognise, or there's a single one of them that you haven't caught their content, you absolutely should. So finally we get to day 2, and the video almost makes it look like I wake up in the coffee shop the following morning. It kind of felt like that after 2 very, very long days of Magic the Gathering and travelling. But I woke up, I got to the same coffee shop, because the coffee there was so great, and the food was beautiful. Hence me doing a little bit of an Instagram and taking photos of my coffee and my food. It was really nice to just kind of sit, collect my thoughts ready for the day, and then go back to the hotel, grab my stuff. The problem with Sunday was that with all the stuff that had happened on the Friday, I was really anxious about not getting my flight back, and so I'd kind of made the decision early on that Sunday was going to be a bit of a shorter day, because my plan was to get my stuff to the airport with the intention of being in a hub for international travel. If anything was to go wrong, I could possibly get alternative arrangements out, and if not, I'm still close enough that I can always use the Eurostar for getting back. So I'd already kind of made the decision that I was going to have to cut Sunday short, but again, that meant there was less content to make. However, I had agreed in the morning to record an in-person game with Shattergang EDH. After getting them up earlier than they'd originally planned so that I could still fit in with my own travel plans, we were moved twice for other content creators who needed a large amount of space, and we ended up with a few technical difficulties that meant that we couldn't actually use the recorded footage from the game that we played, which is a real shame because Laura was doing her thing, but it does also give further evidence that Dean is absolutely the threat. Then unfortunately it was a quick jaunt back to the airport to sit for a couple of hours whilst I waited for my flight to go onto the board. Thankfully there were no issues with me getting home. Getting through security was funny because I'd had 3 or 4 boulders, and I'd already had lots of messages saying, you know, when you go through airport security, they are probably going to look at your boulders because they are oddly shaped and look like other things, and therefore it's usually quite triggering through airport security. the interesting thing was more that they were taking them off. They understood what Pokemon cards were, but did not understand that these weren't Pokemon cards. And they started swabbing the tops of them for obvious substances and other things. So there we have it. A very whistle-stop tour of a day and a half, not even 3 days of MagicCon, unfortunately, due to all the issues. But thank you so much for spending all that time. Feel free to give us a like and a subscribe, and leave in the comments your favourite story from MagicCon if you went, or if maybe you're thinking of going to a MagicCon in the future. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and see you again soon.